Hello, BookTube. I went to the Brattle first thing this morning, the Brattle Bookshop in downtown Boston. It was a crisp, clear morning. Felt a little bit like autumn, which is crazy because autumn as a season doesn't exist anymore. The trees will change color, but the temperatures will be in the high 80s until suddenly it's winter. Suddenly, overnight, it'll be winter. But this morning felt like autumn. Certainly it did. And that's germane because the main draw for me at the Brattle Bookshop is the outdoor sale lot. Thousands and thousands of books for $1, $3, or $5. So since I'm going to spend my time out in the elements, it's always interesting to me to know what the weather is like. Those of you who are wondering, the bean is not on her perch. She is right next to me. she is right there next to me. She needs to be within 3 feet of me pretty much at all times. She'll go wandering, make the rounds, check for mice, that sort of thing. Maybe look at the food in her bowl, but not eat it. But always to come straight back. She needs to be within 3 feet of me, so this is perfect. She can perch up there while I work on my fainting couch all day long. Sometimes she likes to be even closer. Sometimes she likes to be pressed up against me. Nothing I can do about it. I'm very touched by it. But anyway, I went to the Brattle, and I shopped, and I got a pile of books. Once again, because the Brattle sale lot is so cheap, you're basically limited only by what you can carry. I had no one with me. I knew that whatever I picked out, I had to carry on my own. So I did. So I got a pile of books, and I'm going to show them to you. It might not seem like too much to carry, but keep in mind, I'm not showing you a few books that I got because they're for you. They're for people who might be watching this video. One of the wonderful things about BookTube is that I now have a huge list of people in my mind. I'm never shopping alone anymore. If I see something, if I squatted down at one of the Brattle carts and I'm picking at titles here and there and I pull something obscure out, I can suddenly think, oh, so-and-so might want this. And I know from firsthand testimony that most of you don't have anything like an active used bookstore to go to anywhere nearby. Certainly nothing like the Brattle. I don't think there's anything like the Brattle anywhere in the world. But even close to that, I quite a few of you have emailed me and said that it's a 20, 30-minute drive just to get to an Oxfam Goodwill style charity shop that has 2 shelves of books that never change or that are crappy. I mean, a lot of you don't. A lot of you are really lucky with your thrift shops. A lot of you can go out and you have cars. I don't have a car. You can go to all sorts of places. But quite a few of you shop vicariously at the Brattle with me because you don't have anything like a used bookstore of your own. And the neat thing about knowing that is that I can keep an eye out for stuff for all sorts of people. But even excluding that, there's still a pile of stuff here that I thought we'd look over. And the first one is something that I have an Oxford trade paperback of it here. I read a hardcover of this, the original edition of this, by its original author. I had no idea that original edition had been amplified by a second author after the first author's death, and I had no idea that it existed in a trade paperback. This is the interpretation of the New Testament by Stephen Neal, who it's fantastic. It's an incredible collection of comparative theologies. Comparative systematic theologies. It's not Stephen Neal so much writing a book about what he thinks about the New Testament. Instead, it's him writing a history, a sort of a history and narrative account, running narrative account of what all sorts of scholars have thought about the New Testament and interpreted it. And he died, and his friend Tom Wright, N.T. Wright, continued this. I had no idea that was true. And it's a feast. If you're interested in reading theology, which I am, this is a feast. So to find this, for $1 when I didn't know it existed at all, it was a win-win, I believe, would be the way to put it. Then we have this old thing. This is from 1905 or 1906, something like that. This is J. Alden Loring, Young Folks Nature Field Book. No idea if this originally came with a dust jacket, but this is a heavily illustrated field book. There's a kingfisher for kids, for young people. That it's a field book because you are supposed to use it in the field and take notes about what you see. This one was never used in the field. This is in absolutely pristine condition, and I naturally moved when I was looking at it. I went straight to the end of September the date that we're at now. Only this would have been, when was this? This is going to tell me. This is 1905, I think, or something like that. 1906. Classic example of the Brattle sale lot. You never know what you're going to find out there. It's not going to be just waterlogged copies of Tom Clancy like you will get, for instance, at the outdoor sale lot at the Strand in New York City, or other outdoor barrows where a store will put out one cart or two. The Brattle puts out thousands of books, and there's quite a bit out there that will fill a collection, absolutely fill a collection. This is not unusual at all to find a book that's 150, 120 years old out there. I went to our date on the calendar. This is all done by a calendar. Let's see here. September 30th. On moonlight nights, skunks come out into the fields to feed on beetles and grasshoppers. They are keenly scented, and you will sometimes see where their claws have assisted in securing an insect that their nose has detected in the ground. They will often approach a man carrying a lantern, and after sniffing at it a few times, will walk away and resume their hunt. This is entirely true. Skunks, and especially porcupines, don't appear to have much fear of anything, naturally. They have incredibly formidable defenses. Porcupines they'll waddle right up to you, in America, in the United States and Canada. I don't know, that never happened to me in Africa. But maybe it wouldn't, right? Because porcupines have been hunted a lot more systematically by a lot more things in Africa than they ever have been in the New World. But porcupines will come right into your camp and just start snuffling around because they know that you're no danger to them. And this book has a black and white photo of a skunk foraging in a tilled field. You can barely make it out. It's weird to think, though. And I was flipping through the book elsewhere, and I came across something else that will be of interest, because this is full of photographs, yes, but it's also full of rather elegant artwork, bird artwork. That's a chimney swift. See, but you'll also get high definition photographs as well. And I was looking at the beginning of the book. I wonder if I'm going to be able to find it now. Yes, my eye automatically caught the picture of the English sparrow, which is neither English nor a sparrow. Discuss amongst yourselves. Naturally, because I have a huge colony of these brawling little a-holes on the hedges outside my front door. They live there. They nest. There's a low-lying bush in the landscape of Dunkin' Donuts, less than a block away. Because if you live in New England and you live more than a block away from a Dunkin' Donuts, you're in a really run-down neighborhood. You need to be that close to Dunkin' Donuts in case you have an emergency need for their hash browns. And half of my sparrows live in that low bush. It's very thick, so if, for instance, a feral cat or a rat or something were to try to prey on them in there, the animal couldn't really get up into the places of that bush where the sparrows nest. It's still a danger, whereas half the sparrows live in the wainscoting of my house. They have a nest in there that is perfectly insulated against the weather. It's invulnerable to attack. The only thing that could possibly get in there would be either a marauding rival band of sparrows, which happened 10 years ago, or a snake of some kind. We don't have any snakes. So I've come to know these creatures quite well, and I was interested to see what J. Alden Loring, who was a naturalist 150 years ago, I was interested to see what he would say about them. I figured if the picture's there, then the description must be right next to it. And sure enough, he didn't have anything nice to say about them. You cannot show your friendship for our native birds in any better way than by being an enemy of the English sparrow. He is a quarrelsome little pest. That I can agree with. And seems to be getting more pugnacious every year. He not only fights with other birds, but he has been seen to throw their eggs to the ground and tear their nests to pieces. Be careful that he does not steal the lunches that you have provided for other birds. This curious, weird idea that the English sparrow is an invasive species. The English sparrow has been here for almost 200 years. And it's true that they are quarrelsome and pugnacious. That is absolutely true. But they're quarrelsome and pugnacious with their own kind as well. It's not like they're working as some sort of Borg collective. That my sparrows would rather fight with each other than eat the food I put out for them. And I can't help but notice that when starlings show up, the starlings that will occasionally show up when they notice that food is on the stoop uh, are 3 times the size of my sparrows, and yet there is no violence. The sparrows aren't territorial. They don't raise a ruckus. Boy, can they when they want to. They can. They could easily band together and drive off those starlings, and they don't. And there's also no violent encounters. They share the food. My sparrows are perfectly willing to share food that I leave out on the porch with another species. They just aren't willing to share with each other at all. But I'm going to love, whether it's made for kids or not, I'm going to love this. So, sorry, I'm partially distracted because the bean is right next to me here. she's right next to me on the couch. She doesn't want to be more than a few inches away from me at any time. I find it adorable, so but that's the reason she's not up here, because she's pressed against me instead. Then this next one is a book that I have showed on this channel before. I've had it and I send it out all the time. People are always interested in it. I grabbed a copy again. It's one of the signs of how wonderful the Brattle is that you get second chances on stuff like this. Most used bookstores that I have known in my life, most times where I have been living somewhere, whether it's Austin or Iowa City or Kuala Lumpur or wherever, most places where I've been living where there was an English language used bookstore nearby, if you saw a book like this, you would only see it once, ever. Same thing with the 150-year-old bird book. But the same thing with this thing. But when I sent it out last time, I sent it to one of you a few years ago, my immediate thought was the Brattle will provide. Another copy will show up. This is by Shirley Robin Letwin. Shirley Robin Letwin. And it's The Gentleman in Trollope. It's a study of gentlemen in the novels of Anthony Trollope. And I'm all for that. Serious, intelligent but engaging studies of Trollope as a writer that are done for the popular audience as a paperback are way, way too few. I don't understand it, but it's nevertheless true. I don't understand it. To me, Trollope is just so endlessly readable. I don't know why he's not everybody's favorite writer. And so I grabbed this anyway because the minute I saw it, I remembered who I sent it to and that I don't have it anymore. But I also grabbed it because for the month of October, for Victober, I am engaged in a Trollope read-along with Jordan Parsons, the booktuber Jordan Parsons. We are reading The Way We Live Now, which I've done a read-along of that book on this channel, and I'm just going to do another one. That's all. It's easily possible to do. I'm just going to do another one. I'll try not to repeat any of the points that I made the first time, but it's going to be a hootenanny. Don't know exactly the timetable there. Probably sometime this weekend. We're doing The Way We Live Now we're doing 25 chapters a week. And you might think, it's a huge novel, and it's about finance and squalor in the heyday of the Victorian era. And you might think, if you don't know anything about Trollope or about the novel, you might think that sounds grueling. I have never met anyone who started reading The Way We Live Now, got to chapter 25, and didn't want to barrel right on. The hardest part about doing a read-along like this is going to be keeping yourself from reading the whole thing all at once. Because Trollope is just that good. And The Way We Live Now, if I remember correctly, is all over this book. Because there are so many creepy, fake people on the make in that novel, and all of them call themselves gentlemen. So what does Trollope mean by that, and how much irony is involved? It's going to be a joy. The timing is perfect for Victober. The timing is absolutely perfect. Then this next one is not a box set. It is a great big biography, but it is not a box set. And for a fraction of a second, I objected to that. But I have wanted to get these paperbacks back in my library for quite some time. I gave them away. Long before BookTube, I gave them to somebody and have been kicking myself ever since, because although the Brattle will provide, you don't see these that often. This is, the author is Irwin Porges, and this is his 2-volume biography of Edgar Rice Burroughs. In these who did these paperbacks? Printed in the USA, but who did these paperbacks? They did not do a good job. These are not very sturdy. Who did this? Brigham Young University Press. All right, so I don't know what that means, but I don't know what that signifies. But this is a huge. This is a one biography of Edgar Rice Burroughs, the founder of modern pulp science fiction. Uh, the author contracted with Burroughs' son to write the book, and was given access to the Burroughs archive in the basement of the Burroughs Museum in Tarzana, California, which is literally floor to ceiling, innumerable boxes full of Burroughs records. Edgar Rice Burroughs never threw a receipt away for a taxi cab, and all of that stuff, all of it is in those boxes. So I believe the author in his preface to this biography. It's been a while since I read it. I am going to read these. I'll be careful. I'll try not to split them apart, because this comes out in one volume. This is published in one volume, but the one volume, I don't know if I can show you what I mean. The one volume is longer. It's an oddly shaped book in order to facilitate the 8 million photographs that are all throughout here. It's not just, there's the cover of All Story. Look at that, the first appearance of Tarzan. It's not just an inset of photos. They're all through the book. Maybe the fact that the binding is so crappy is a reflection on the fact that Brigham Young University didn't have that much experience with this sort of thing. But I don't like the size of the hardcover. The hardcover is the sensible way to do it. This is the definitive biography of Edgar Rice Burroughs as a working author. But the hardcover is the way to do it because these things are delicate. These trade paperbacks are not well made. But I don't like the size of the hardcover. So I was waiting for the trade paperbacks. And they come in a box set. And when I saw these individually out in the sale lot, I thought, oh, well, but I want the box set. And then I remembered, every time I've ever had that box set, I have ripped the books to shreds because they fit too snugly in the box. So many's the time where I wanted to pull out, especially volume 2 of this set, and read some particular thing, and I'm doing this with the box. So I suddenly realized, while I was looking there, while I was standing there out in the carts, I was all by myself, there's no one else there. I was staring at it, and I suddenly realized, no, this is the way you want it. This is exactly the way you want it. If you get a box set, you're not going to throw away the box. You'll keep it even though it annoys you. You don't want the hardcover, and you don't want the box set. You want the 2 individual volumes. But the Burroughs' son approached this author and gave him access to that vast archive. So I guess you could say that this is an authorized life. No one else has ever had access to that to the extent. I mean, Porges was given access to family photo albums, all sorts of anecdotes from all sorts of people who aren't around anymore to give them again or to verify. There's never going to be a better biography of Edgar Rice Burroughs, and he deserves one. He absolutely deserves one. And the son of Edgar Rice Burroughs has a little forward to this biography in which he says what so many people say about authorized biographies, which is, I judged my man. I judged my biographer. And that's as far as I went. I judged the man or the woman and thought, okay, they're going to be fair. They're not trying to do a hit job of any kind or hagiography. I judged that, and that's as far as my interference went. After that, I said, here's the key. Go at it. The son, in his preface to this, says, this is in no way shaped by me or the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate. Not in any way. I gave the author unimpeded access to the greatest treasure trove of primary documents for Edgar Rice Burroughs that is ever going to exist, and I let him decide what book he would write. And boy, oh boy, that would make this biography important anyway. The biography is actually called The Man Who Created Tarzan. Edgar Rice Burroughs, The Man Who Created Tarzan. These trade paperbacks have artwork on both sides. That would make this important anyway. That Porges had access to all of that material, and later writers. There's been, I think, 2 popular biographies of Edgar Rice Burroughs since this. There haven't been a patch on this in terms of length or depth or complexity. But that wouldn't have mattered. I mean, that would make this volume, it would make this big biography important, but it wouldn't have mattered if he hadn't been able to tell a story. But this is terrific reading. Absolutely terrific reading. And it starts right from the beginning. He doesn't drag you through the normal stations of the cross that big authorized biographies do. Instead, he gets right to the storytelling. And it's terrific. There's a typically breathless foreword by Ray Bradbury, all about how Burroughs shaped him. Probably some aspects of that are true. But then we just jump right into the action. It's terrific. Let me read you, since So I'm talking all about this. Let me read you the way this thing begins. See how quickly I can get to the very beginning. The prologue. On a July day in 1911, Edgar Rice Burroughs sat in a small office at the intersection of Market and Monroe Streets in Chicago. He had borrowed desk space from a friend in order to launch his latest enterprise, an agency for the sale of pencil sharpeners. The salesmen who responded to his ads were sent out on a commission basis. As he puts it, they did not sell any pencil sharpeners, he noted, but in the leisure moments, while I was waiting for them to come back and tell me that they had not sold any, ... Of course, what else was there to do? He started writing. It's going to be a joy to reread this. I haven't read it in a long time. I'm just going to have to be careful because the Brigham Young University did not bind these very well. So these volumes tend to split apart. Every time I've had them, they split apart. That's why I always just mechanically grab them. Although in this case, I'm glad that I did anyway because I don't have a copy, and it's a great biography. Then these next two are paperback substitutions for stuff that I already have. They're going to go on the Books About Books and the critical, the book review bookcase, because these are really in better shape. They're really worth annotating. I only had old mass market paperbacks with these things, and they are pretty stiff. They really can't be manhandled very much. And these are the critical works of the great poet W.H. Auden. I got a collected Auden poems over a year ago at the Brattle, and I have been slowly marinating in it the whole time. Slowly appreciating those poems, reading one against the other, reading one and then mulling over it for a day or 2 days or a week. It's really been helping with my estimation of Auden as a poet. But I've always had a high estimation of him as a nonfiction writer. His version of my job, of my profession, where some editor comes to him and says, there's a new critical edition of Alice in Wonderland. I need you to write 6,000 words on Lewis Carroll and Alice in Wonderland, and I'll pay you $100 or £100 or whatever. Auden never turned that work down. No matter how highfalutin a writer is of any kind, they never turn that work down. Even after they've won their Nobel Prize, they still don't ever turn that work down, okay? No matter what they tell you, don't believe it. They never do turn it down. And Auden brought out a bunch of books, and I found 2 beautiful old vintage paperbacks, trade paperbacks, that are floppy. They're in the perfect condition as the day they were printed. There's forwards and afterwards, and the dyer's hand. So I have these now in versions that don't require any reinforcement and that can be read and annotated to a fairly well, which is great because I really need that. The paperbacks that I have, I only got because I never thought I would see these, much less see them in this condition. So that's great. Those will go on the Books About Books bookcase. But then this next one is a UK hardcover of P.D. James. As time goes on, I am less and less resistant to the fact that I like the authors that I like. I'm always open. My mind is wide open for new authors. But after all this time in my 28th year, if I look back and I say, well, P.D. James is a perfect example, or Ruth Rendell, for instance. If I look back on these authors, or Edgar Rice Sparrows for that matter, I look back on these authors that I know are considered lowly genre authors on the part of literary snobs. I've reached a point now where I look back on that and I say, I love them. And I love rereading them. So I want them. And I know what I want. I want the novels of P.D. James in UK hardcovers from, I think, Faber and Faber was her publisher. I have Devices and Desires in that format. And I don't have anything else. All the rest that I have a couple of UK trade paperbacks of her. But I go back to her novels enough so that I want them in hardcover. So now I have a grand total of 2, because I found another one. I found The Murder Room. See, this Faber and Faber hardcover that has nothing on the back. I think that's Faber and Faber, is it not? Let's find out. Yeah, Faber and Faber. And this looks exactly like the trade paperback did. But I want P.D. James in this. I want her in hardcover, and I want all of these mysteries that way. That's all there's to it. It'll probably take the whole rest of my life to find any more of them, but I will wait. And this is a terrific murder mystery. It takes place on Hampstead Heath. Those of you who have never been there, you could Google it. I'm sure there are plenty of YouTube tours of it. But her inspector, Dalgleish, is investigating a murder in a tiny little private museum on Hampstead Heath. There are a couple of them that are almost certainly formed the inspiration for this book. Almost certainly P.D. James was dragged to one of those places, with the echoing floors and the attendants just out of earshot and the overpriced gift shop and the modicum of genuine interest, and the historical grounds, a tiny little historical building. Almost certainly she was dragged to a place like this, like the museum. I'm trying to remember what the name of the museum is in here, the Dupain Museum in here. Almost certainly she was dragged to the real world equivalent of one of those things and started to think what murder mystery authors always do, which is, how would a murder mystery go in a place like this? Every room is right next to every other room. Could you kill somebody in this museum and have nobody know? And how would you do it? Would you use maybe one of the odd things on exhibit? Would you use that either to kill the person or to display the dead body? Because there's plenty of ill will here. The museum is facing dire straits, dire future financial straits. As usual with P.D. James, my favorite of hers is Original Sin. I long for the day when I find a Faber and Faber UK hardcover of Original Sin with a dust jacket. I long for the day. That's set in the publishing world. As is usual with Original Sin or Devices and Desires or anything else, The Lighthouse, all of her classic books. I'm so glad that this author wrote long enough for me to review her. That's so wonderful. Although there's a bad flip side to that as well, which is that she also lived long enough. I stuck around long enough, came back into the writing world, so in time for me to write her obituary, which is really kind of bittersweet. If you like an author, you really don't want to be writing their obituary, and I did. I wrote her obituary. The obituary for her that ran in the Washington Post was mine. But anyway, as in all those cases, she tells you all about the characters in her book. They don't just get shoved on in the third chapter when the exposition is due in order to talk a little and give a cardboard characteristic to Dalglish and his team and then shuffle off. We get to know them. It's very much, those of you who are familiar, for instance, with Elizabeth George, she does a lot of the same thing. It's very much like that. I consider it to be an infinitely higher literary pain. But it's the same thing in that she is really telling a novel in which a murder takes place rather than telling a murder novel. It's so nice to find this in this format. I'm sure that I will indulge in a reread. I'm sure that I will, even though there's no justification for it. October is right around the corner. I've got a million things to read for October, a million of them. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because, as I said, I like what I like. And I'm not going to fight that. If Stephen King fans can dote over him, even in their late 20s, then I can dote over the authors that I love. Although mine are all better, and theirs stink. Okay? And then the last thing that I want to show you from this trip to the Brattle is another box set. But this one is a box set. This one is not. These Edgar Rice Burroughs volumes, you always see them in a box set. If you don't see the big, oddly shaped hardcover, you see these in a box set. And I would, for a second, I pined for that. But no, I want the volumes separately. They'll last longer if I have them separately. Whereas this volume, well, I don't really know how this box set works. This is... I don't even know who publishes this, but I love this work, and we'll just see whether or not the books come out. Actually, we can find out together. This is the North translation of Plutarch's Lives in a box. Let's see how it works. Oh, smooth as butter. Oh, that's what I like. Excellent. This is in 2 volumes. North was the younger brother of a lord. He was the younger brother of Baron in the Age of Elizabeth. And he dedicates the one iteration of his translation of Plutarch to Queen Elizabeth that came out in 1580, 1590, something like that. Well, I don't remember the exact date. I'm bad with dates, but he worked on it for a long time. He did one sort of splash of here is an English language Plutarch, and then when it did well, when people liked it, he kept adding to it. He didn't translate all of Plutarch all at once. Instead, he kept going back to it and adding supplementary lives. There's pros and cons to the North Plutarch. This was, before Dryden, this was, of course, the Plutarch, and really ought to be a Penguin classic. It really ought to be, regardless of how old it is. There there's a pro and a con, a major pro and a major con to the North Plutarch. The major con is that it's not even really, it's not a translation of Plutarch. It's a translation of a French translation of Plutarch. Jacques Amiot. North was familiar with a translation of Plutarch and translated that into English. Now, I would argue North was really careful and Amiot was fairly careful. For the time, they were both fairly careful. So I don't think you're really getting a telephone game garbled version of Plutarch. I really think I'm very familiar with the North Plutarch, and I think you get the flavor of Plutarch quite a bit in these volumes. That's the con, though, is that it's not anything like the kind of translation provenance that we want in the 21st century. It would never fly in the 21st century to do that and call it Plutarch. The most you would do if you did something like this in the 21st century would be to say it's North's translation of Amiot, not North's translation of Plutarch. So that's the con. The pro outweighs it considerably, and the pro is that this is one of the greatest translations ever done. And North is one of the greatest masters of English prose ever to write in the language. And he doesn't get enough credit for that. He really doesn't. That's why I say this ought to be a Penguin Classic. Not Plutarch, but North's Plutarch ought to exist. I don't think that it does. I mean, you can get it. I'm sure you can get it on Project Gutenberg or something like that. But I don't think you can walk into a bookstore and even special order a copy of North's Plutarch for yourself. And that's a terrible shame. I don't know what it is about the publishing world and this particular author. Plutarch, I mean, not North, although North gets the shaft as well. But I don't understand why we treat Plutarch the way we do. But if we don't take up that subject, if we just stick with North, his English is astounding. Even now, amazing. He is one of the I would argue, one of the foremost wielders of the famously vigorous Elizabethan prose line. We think of a whole bunch of other Elizabethans when we think along those lines. Too seldom do I hear North's name mentioned in that. But he should be. On the basis of this translation alone, he should be. Of course, the way that you would probably know this translation is that he inspired Shakespeare quite a bit. With the North Plutarch inspired a lot of Shakespeare's work, and a lot of Shakespeare's phraseology as well. Shakespeare was as aware as anyone of the thunderously beautiful prose that you're getting here, that is not anywhere in Amiot, and that is not anywhere in Plutarch. Plutarch has other virtues, but North brings an amazing individual talent to the table here. So I was very happy to find this. This is the only version I've ever had the North Plutarch in, and I haven't had this box set in forever. I noticed that one of these volumes has somebody pulled this the wrong way to get it out of the box. The key with the box set is just to upend it and get the volume out that way. Somebody didn't do that, so I might have to tape that just a little. I don't plan on getting rid of this at all. Just the other day, this week, what is this, Friday? This is Friday, just on Monday and Tuesday, I was reading the, who is it who does it? I think it was Robin Waterfield's translation of Plutarch's Life of Mark Antony. Just the other day, just a couple of days ago, I was reading it and marveling at it. Just marveling at Waterfield's translation and marveling at just how great Plutarch is, how just fantastic he is. I'm not the only person who's thought that way, but he's not known to be fantastic now. People don't love him the way I think they should. But that was just the other day that I was thinking, boy, oh boy, you read one life in Plutarch and you really want to start reading more. So the first thing I'm going to do with this, I'm going to try to resist the allure of this because, like I said, I've got a lot of October reading to do. But the first thing I'm going to do, in fact, the thing I'll do before I put this away, I won't just sit with it for a weekend, but I do want to sample all of these books before I put them on the shelf. The key at the Brattle, as always, is to get keepers. This is a keeper, absolutely. Probably what I will do before I put this away in the collection is read the North Life of Antony. Since I've got that fresh in my mind, that's probably what I'll do. But that was the trip to the Brattle. Lots and lots of good stuff. Plenty of things here that I plan on keeping. The goal is always keepers. The Auden books I'm obviously going to keep. I'm going to be annotating them for years. They won't fall apart the way the mass markets will. The Edgar Rice Burroughs biography, it's a great biography. It belongs in my collection. Biography is an art on its own. It's not just a question of the latest documents. It's an art on its own. This is a great biography. The only reason I sound tentative is because these paperbacks, why hasn't somebody reprinted this book in a big paperback that is fully illustrated, but maybe isn't as weird a shape as that hardcover? I mean, these things prove that you can fit all the illustrations in a normal size paperback. So why not just make, I don't know, these haven't been reprinted, and they never will be. There have been a couple of Edgar Rice Burroughs biographies since then, but that is definitely a keeper. The only way I would ever get rid of this is if somebody implored me to send it to them. I don't imagine that happening. What was it? Oh, yeah, the P.D. James is also a keeper. That's going in the Little Book Room this weekend. So there are some keepers in here, and that's great. So that's what we have here. And we have P.D. James, The Murder Room, which is one room in the Dupain Museum. Then we have The North Plutarch. Fantastic to find this for, I think this was $3. Fantastic. Then we have this 2-volume edition in paperback of Edgar Rice Burroughs' The Man Who Created Tarzan. Then also in 2 volumes we have the collected criticism and nonfiction pieces of the great poet W.H. Auden. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, no, the logistics. It's not the pile, it's the logistics. And the logistics are wrong because the bean is right next to me. Then we have Young Folks Nature Field Book by J. Alden Loring, a 100-year-old nature book. We have The Gentleman in Trollope, study of one particular kind of person and what it takes to be one. And finally, we have Interpretations of the New Testament by Stephen Neal and finished up and updated by Tom Wright. Fantastic. Just fantastic. So quite a few keepers here, I would think. I'm hoping, anyway. But that's my second Brattle trip of the week. I'm not going this weekend. I'm not doing anything but writing this weekend. And reading. And making BookTube videos. Of course, I'm not going to ignore my imaginary BookTube friends. So we're going to wrap this up for now. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.